escaped the king. So he ordered the book recording daily events be brought to him and read to him. So the king wasn't able to sleep that night. He was really pretty miserable. He tossed and he turned, till finally he decided, well, I'm just going to get up and I'll just have somebody read to me. And of course, that day and time, they didn't have novels, so what they read was pretty realistic. So what his eunuch would be reading to him was an account of what happens every day in the kingdom. So he has his eunuch reading to him about what has recently occurred in the kingdom. The eunuch read to the king that an assassination had been planned, but one of the citizens, whose name was Mordecai, found out about the assassination and reported this to the king. The king asked the eunuch, what have we done for this Mordecai? And the eunuch replied, we've done nothing. Mordecai is still at the palace gate, pacing back and forth. In the meantime, the evil Haman has already had the gallows built, and he's waiting in the courts so that he can have his chance to go in and talk to the king, and who knows what he wants to talk to the king about. He wants to convince the king that Mordecai is an evil man who deserves to be hanged, and I just happen to have the gallows built and ready to hang him. So the king, speaking to his eunuch, says to him, who is out in the court? Is there anyone out in the court? And the eunuch gets up and takes a look to see if there's anyone out in the court at this time of the morning. And who would be there except the evil Haman? So the eunuch goes back into the king and informs him that Haman's walking out back and forth in the court, and the king says, bring him in. The king inquires of Haman, what would you do for a man who the king desires to honor? How can we show this man my appreciation? Well, of course, Haman thinks that the king is talking about him. He really thinks the king wants to honor him. So he begins to tell the king, well, you should get one of your royal garments and place upon his shoulder, and you should allow him to ride around on the royal horse, and you should appoint a high official to declare before him, this is what is done for the one that the king desires to honor. Well, all along, Haman thinks that it's going to be him. And he's telling the people all the things that he would love. He's telling the king all the things that he would love to be done to him. Well, to Haman's surprise, the king agrees. He says, excellent. Do these things for Mordecai the Jew. Oh my gosh. Mordecai the Jew? You really want me to do these things for Mordecai? Haman has to do what the king orders, but he's not a happy person. So out he goes to honor Mordecai the Jew. The eunuch takes hold of the royal garments, and they place them around Mordecai's shoulder. And they adorned Mordecai with royal garments. And they placed him on a royal horse. And Haman has to walk around and declare, this is what is done for the one that the king desires to honor. So he walks throughout the city declaring, this is what is done for the one whom the king desires to honor. Well, Mordecai is happy. He's never had such treatment before in his life. But on the other hand, Haman is really disappointed. He thought that today he would be honored and Mordecai would be killed. So he hurriedly goes home to tell his wife and his family the horrible thing that has taken place today. In the meantime, the king's eunuch arrives at Haman's home to escort him to the royal banquet. King Mordecai arrives at the royal banquet with Haman, and Esther has once again prepared a beautiful feast. For of course, if you remember, the king has had to delay some really important royal business to accommodate his wife Esther. So he asked his wife Esther once again, what is it that you require of me? He said, I will allow you up to half of my kingdom at your word. And Esther then declares to the king, she says, O honorable king, she says, there's one in your kingdom who desires to destroy me and all of my people. She said, had they only recommended that we be made into slaves, I would not complain to you. But because they desire not only to dishonor us, but to destroy my entire nation of people, I plead for you. I plead before you for my life and the life of my people. Well, the king is shocked. Who in my kingdom would want such a thing? He has no idea that Esther's true name is Hadassah, and she's actually a Jew. Esther points to Haman and said, it's the evil Haman who desires to do this. The king is shocked. He is so enraged that he gets up from the banquet table and he walks out. Meanwhile, Esther sits over on the recliner, distressed and praying that somehow the king will be moved to set her people free. Haman realizes that, oh my goodness, the king is probably going to have my head for this. So he rushes over to Esther and he falls upon her lap and he pleads for his life. At this very moment, the king returns just in time to find Haman in his wife's lap. He's enraged. The royal eunuch takes hold to Haman. He explains to the king that Haman has had a gallows built to hang Mordecai. And the king instructs him, carry Haman out and hang him on the gallows. But it doesn't end there, because once the royal palace has made a decree, and once that decree has been sealed by the king, it can't be reversed. So still, the Jewish people are subject to being annihilated. So, the people of the kingdom continue to mourn and cry out to God and ask that He does something to change the circumstances. Meanwhile, the king and his wife Esther and Mordecai, they stood and contemplated and thought, what can we do so that the Jewish people are not annihilated? And they came up with a great plan. The plan was, on that day that the people were given to annihilate the Jews have every right to fight back in any way they can to defend themselves and to protect their people and their belongings. At once, the royal eunuch was given a decree which he carried throughout the city to inform the Jews and the other citizens alike that the king had permitted the Jewish nation to defend themselves against any attackers. The mourners got up from mourning. They were happy that this would at least give them an opportunity to be spared from destruction. So on the appointed day in the kingdom, people rose up to defend, the Jewish people rose up to defend themselves against anyone who would try to come in and take their belongings and destroy them. So there was great fighting in the kingdom on this day. And the Jewish people were victorious. The Jewish people were victorious.